Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Has anyone here seen a ghost or witnessed some supernatural situation? Be honest. B10, basement bedroom, game room, etc. Going to sleep. Start hearing weird music, like a women's choir. Take Halo 3 menu music for reference, that style of music without the instrumentals. Start getting nervous because there is no logical reasoning for the noises. Also because I'm by myself. Parents watching TV upstairs. Literally scream for my parents. Nothing. The music is getting louder. Straight book it to my parents. They didn't hear a thing. TV wasn't the reason. I often joked my house had paper walls because of the ease of sound travel throughout. Freaked me the hell out. Fast forward to 2012, 9 years later. Only experience with viable proof. Watch this, it's mine. Recorded with my phone to find out why I wake up all the time. Found this on the first night of recording.
I like telling my story. It helps make me come to grips with it. Back when I was young, around 10, maybe as young as 8, I would wake up every night around midnight. I'm not sure why, but it was every night. And usually I never really woke up all the way up and would fall back asleep fairly quickly. But, being the paranoid little child I was, I would quickly scan the room each time. One night I actually found something. At the end of my bed stood a figure, maybe 4 feet tall. It had the appearance of a monk wearing a robe, with a hood, and the arms crossed in front, sleeve in sleeve. It was a chalky white, somewhat transparent. You could see through all of it, except for through the opening of the hood. That was pitch black. I just stared. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I have no idea how much time had passed. It turned, very slowly, to its right. It floated to the corner of my bed. The floating was a fluid movement. Not steps. It made the same slow turn again. It floated right next to my side. It made one last final turn to face me. At that point, I was just peering over the edge of my blanket. I'll never forget it. I remember the solid blackness of its face and being able to see all of the details of my toy box directly through it. I hid my face. I could see the white glow through my thin blanket and could make the figure's whole form out from under my shield. There I laid for hours, never peeking out again. But I could see it. I could tell it was there. I dared not shut my eyes for hours, and there it stood, ominously floating by my bed. After hours, I must have decided that it would go away if I just shut my eyes. I fell asleep under the gaze of it. The next morning, it was gone, forever remaining in my memory.
B13, in my neighbor's house. Only me, my brother, our neighbor, and his brother. Suddenly, the bedroom door slams shut and locks itself. Can only lock from the inside. Hear laughter and footsteps run across to the front bedroom. Unlock the door and run into the other room. Nothing there. B25, go to a spooky Castle Manor house on a paranormal investigation. I'm there just to take photos for them. Go upstairs to a room that can only be accessed by going through the entire building right to the back. As we walk into the room, a very large and very heavy wooden stool small bench falls over and slides about 5 inches across the floor. Everyone runs apart from me. Take photos of the room, but nothing turns up. This one is more a time warp kind of thing. It's happened a few times in my house. B12, getting ready for school. Putting books in my bag. Look to the left and see a pair of large red shoes. Skip forward 10 years. Go to get my shoes. As I bend down, I realize they are exactly like the ones I saw when I was 12. Realize they are in the exact same place as the ones I saw back then.
Hey, tell us more about the time warps.
Well, the only other significant one I've posted before, but will post again. Be quite young playing with TMNT figures on the bathroom floor. Leonardo loses his sword in combat, and it is left behind as I move further into the bathroom. Turn around a few minutes later and the sword is nowhere to be seen. Skip forward. Be about 19. Brushing teeth one morning in the bathroom. Hear something small and plastic hit the floor behind me. Turn around, and there is the tiny TMNT sword that I dropped all those years ago. Show my brother, and he is as confused as I am. Put it in a locked box with other random things. Skip forward. B24. Go in the box for something. Sword is gone again. It's usually minor things like that. Like a t-shirt recently went missing for months, not in any of the drawers or the washing basket. We keep a basket under the worktop in the kitchen with all the stuff that needs to be ironed. And I checked it thoroughly 3 times, with my mom and brother also having a look through. Suddenly, a few days later, the t-shirt was on top of the basket, even though I had only hours before to put stuff in the basket from the washing line. No one knows how it appeared on top of the basket or where it had been. This stuff seems to happen within a small radius as well, like a 10-foot cylinder going from upstairs to downstairs and distorting time only within that area.
This happens to me so damn much. I remember one time when I was 7 or 8, I was playing at my friend's house with Lego skeletons because I thought a skeleton army was way cooler than a knight army. And I'm giving them all these little fire swords, made of a little flame piece and a little black dumbbell looking thing. And I finally have all the swords finished. And when I turned around to put it in a pile with the rest of the little fire swords, all of them were gone, except the one that was in my hand. A few days later, I was about to go to sleep, so I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth, and I heard this plinking noise coming from my room. When I went in there, all the little fire swords we had lost the other day were sitting in a pile in the middle of the floor.
Well, I think I've seen what I perceive was supernatural. When I used to live in Houston, Texas, in my grandmother's house, lots of unexplainable things had happened before. I'll tell you my experience and then one of my mother's. My grandmother had 9 children, 3 girls, 6 boys. Most of them were roughly 2 years apart, each, just about. And most of the time, one of the families lived with her in her house. The house itself was unimpressive, a bad neighborhood, bullet holes in most windows, literal knife fights happening in the backyard and driveway, which is why it was more a house that the family congregated at in order to protect the matriarch of the family. The layout consisted of a living room with a hallway side exit on one side and a dining room on the other. Connected to the dining room was the kitchen and then family room, which had the other end of this large L-shaped hallway on it. At each end of the hallway was a bathroom. Until I was roughly 4 or 5, the hallway had been open at both ends. It wasn't until after we put a door up at one end that my experience happened. The family had come over for its usual dinner meeting, which seemed to happen at least 3 or 4 days of the week, and we had just finished eating a few hours back. You know how a lot of people talk about that one room no one wants to be in, that never has the light on and you just want to flip the light switch as you run by? That was across from the bathroom in this L-shaped hallway that was always unlit. When I was 5 or so, me and my cousin's sister had been playing around outside in the backyard, and it was getting close to time to go in for the night. I needed to use the bathroom, so I headed in. As I'm walking through the family room, my father asked me a question, and I stopped and talked to him for a brief moment. I, being 5, inform him of my bladder's near explosion and head to the hallway. I open the recently added door and shut it behind me, the bathroom door being immediately inside the hallway to my left, and there being no light in the hallway at all. I open the bathroom door and I'm greeted by a massive figure that is completely black, like an endless void type of black, other than its 2 massive red eyes, not glowing red, but just huge and vivid red. As it reached for me, being 5, I bolted to the hallway's door, flinging it open and jumping on my father because, as a male, father is the only thing that could save me from this thing. He asked me what had happened, and I explained what happened. As we're talking, you can hear my grandmother shuffling slowly down the hallway, and they put it off as I saw her and just scared myself, until an uncle and my mother had an experience of their own not too long after that. As my mother tells me the story, it starts that as all the children and my father are asleep, my uncle is asleep in the family room. A big family stayed in the same house a lot, and my mother is on her way to the restroom. They both hear someone call my uncle's name from the living room. They both rush in, one from each side of the room, to nothing in the room. They give each other a quizzical look and carry on what they were doing. As my uncle heads back into the family room, he finds every single picture on the wall has been placed on the couch, leaning against the back, facing out towards the middle of the room. There were quite a few personal experiences in that house, but these were the two that stood out most to me. There's also another good one that me and my cousins had experienced once. We had some family that lived in a trailer park whose trailer had once had a death in it. It was an older man who died in the back room in his bed. Of course, the bed had been removed and the house was redone before family members had purchased it. We, as children, having heard the story of the old man, went into that bedroom when it was dark outside and in the room. We were all at the door, shoving in but not wanting to go in. For a few seconds we were extremely skeptical and were on the verge of just going back to play outside. When a figure sat up in the bed, we knew for a fact that no one was in the house other than us. There was also an aliens experience I had once. Family is poor. An uncle's house in a Deer Park trailer park had a nice big front porch on it. Me and a cousin of mine were just messing around, minding our own business, when a light we thought was a helo at first stopped in the sky not too far away, enough that whatever it was wasn't completely visible. This object suddenly went down to the ground, or where we couldn't see it at least, for at least 15 seconds. After that time, it rose back into the sky vertically and instantly took off at a high rate of speed.
This sweet old woman died in my apartment building when I was 8 or 9. Some weird things happened for the next year or so. I frequently see vague shadows and air movements in my room that resemble animals, but that was probably just my child imagination. One day I woke up to see this gray terrier trotting around the apartment, only to disappear when I looked it in the eye. See a tall, thin man walking through the living room at night, but he was friendly and minding his own business. Airborne brown blobs that shift into vaguely human shapes and back into amorphous brown blobs and disappear. One day, playing out in the snow, a little blonde girl taps me on the back. I turn around to see her, and she waves and fades away. Don't see too much after that. That was the only friendly experience I've had with ghosts. Sure, I was terrified of it as a kid, but in retrospect, it was pretty mundane.
Well, to start off, there have been various events that have led up to the scariest moment of my life. I still tear up even writing about this story, because it scared me so much. I am still not sure if I believe in ghosts. Though I have had a few encounters with what I would deem paranormal entities, I am still not sure if what I saw was actually there, or if my mind was playing tricks on me. What I've come to accept is that there are things out there that we simply cannot explain yet. The first time that I ever saw a ghost was when I was about 10 or 11. My family and I were visiting the log cabin village in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We were walking through various cabins, looking at old-style furniture and old-style clothing. It was all pretty boring, to say the least. However, that was until we walked into a 2-story cabin that was once used as a school building for children. At the time, I had been carrying a small flower in my hand that I had picked up from the grass outside. My dad and I were done looking at the downstairs of the cabin, so we headed up the stairs to check out what was on the upper story. That is when I saw it. As I walked about halfway up the stairs, I looked to my right to gaze into the room. As I turned my head, I made eye contact with a woman. However, I knew instantly that this was not a living person. First of all, The woman was stuck on the floor. She was sticking out of the floor from the waist up. Second of all, I could see right through her. She had no color. All of her features were outlined in white. I could see distinct facial features and clothing. She was wearing clothing from the mid-1800s. But I could also see the furniture and everything behind her. I was scared. My fight or flight response kicked in, but instead of choosing one or the other, I chose both. I threw the flower at her, which proceeded to go right through her, and then I hightailed out of there. Now you might think that this was all just made up by the imagination of a little kid, but my dad was right behind me and saw everything that I did. To this day, he still swears that he saw a ghost with me in that log cabin. However, this was not the only ghost encounter that me or my father have had, nor the scariest. Now on to the scarier story. My mom and my dad divorced when I was younger, so I would spend a week at my dad's place, then a week at my mom's place. Both parents lived in apartments, both in nicer areas of the city. Both apartments were quaint and homey, but something about my mother's apartment just was not right. Whenever I was alone anywhere in the house, I would just feel uneasy. There would be some times where I would go downstairs to get water, but would be stopped in my tracks with an intense feeling of dread and fear. For a long time, I would just ignore it, until many more peculiar things would occur. These occurrences started off small. I was playing Xbox in my room when suddenly my bathroom light would turn off. This freaked me out quite a bit the first few times it happened, but I eventually just brushed it off as electrical issues. But then stuff started happening at night. I would wake up in the middle of night scared as hell for no reason, looking into my bathroom with an intense feeling of fear. Again, this scared me for a while, but I again blew it off, attributing this to just being night terrors. What I did not know at the time was that my mother was seeing some weird things too. She visited her counselor once a week and began complaining about the stuff she would see at home. She would complain about the light flickering on and off randomly, stuff like that. But what really freaked her out was that furniture, decorations, etc. started moving around. She would come home on weekdays where we would be at our dad's apartment to find stuff moved around the house. A chair would be at a different spot underneath the table, or a picture frame would be moved a few feet to the right, or some objects would trade places with others. Still, despite all this happening, no one in my family believed our place was haunted, until one terrifying night. My brother and I share a bedroom at my mother's apartment. We would sleep with the light off, but with the bathroom light on in order to have some light in the room. I was very afraid of the dark, still am today despite being 20 years old, so the bathroom functioned as a very large nightlight. Well, that night, my brother and I went to bed as normal. We had school the next day, so we went to bed fairly early. My mother had been taking summer college courses, so she was downstairs typing up an English paper on our family computer. So I go to bed normally, but I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm tearing up typing this part. It's so scary. I wake to the noise of my little brother screaming his head off. I'm talking blood-curdling screams of pure terror. I instantly sit up in bed and look at him, screaming, trying to figure out what the hell is happening. I see him looking right at the bathroom. So I look in the bathroom and I am instantly paralyzed by fear. Standing in the doorway is some black figure. Imagine a really skinny man, about 5 feet tall, totally black without any features. I was so scared that I could not even scream. I just threw the covers over my head as my brother kept screaming at the top of his lungs. Finally, after about 5 seconds, my mother bursted into the room and turned the lights on. I lowered my covers to find that the figure was no longer there. My mom grabbed us, took us to her room and locked the door. She called the cops immediately, and what she described scared me even more. So at about 3 a.m., my mother was typing up her English paper. Out of the blue, she heard this extremely loud choking noise coming from upstairs. She said it did not sound like any animal she had ever heard before. She said that it was a distinct noise, like someone being strangled and choking for air. So she got up and started to investigate until she heard my brother screaming. That's when she ran up the stairs and bursted into my room. The cops came 30 minutes later and searched the area. They found nothing. No explanation for the choking noises, no men in my house, Nothing outside the house that could have caused the noises. Nothing. Going to school the next day was rough. I was an emotional mess and was continually on edge the entire day. Coming home and going back to sleep in that room was even harder. I still to this day do not know what I saw in that bathroom. But I do know that there was something dark in that apartment, something evil.
When I was 16, my dad passed away unexpectedly. In the weeks that followed, I had several experiences on my own and one that was shared with my mother. On my own, there were a ton of phone calls that showed up as weird scrambled letters on the caller ID. There was always silence on the other end. The last call I said, "I love you, Daddy." I don't apologize for saying Daddy. I was in a pretty messed up place emotionally, and the phone clicked off. Never a call from that number after that. I also had several dreams with him in them, though this is significantly less reliable, but I tend to think it was an experience as I could smell him in my dream, and while I don't remember any of the things we talked about, I remember he said he had to go and couldn't come back. It wasn't the last time I dreamt of him, but it was the last time I could smell him in my dream. As for the shared experience, my mother and I were watching TV in the living room when an incredibly bright light manifested at the head of the dining room table where my dad always sat. The light quickly moved into the kitchen from the dining room and then disappeared. We both experienced it, and neither of us had an explanation. We lived out in the sticks, so it wasn't like a car driving by or reflections or anything. It was a manifestation of light that I can't explain. So, I don't know if any of this qualifies, but I figured I'd answer your question.
I have. There is a ghost in my house, not mean nor nice, but rather childish and annoying. 2 other family members have experienced it without me ever mentioning it beforehand. "Anon, I think there is a ghost in your house," to which I reply, "So he messed with you too? I'm not going nuts." It was fucking with me one day, making noises in the other room where I was. I was pissed off that night from a bad day, and I just yelled at that thing to go fuck off. I went to lay down, and it lifted my right leg with what felt like a firm grasp.
Call a priest.
Nah, it really doesn't bother me. It doesn't scare me in the sense that I am fearing for my life or run away screaming. It just startles me at times. It just walks around my house and closes doors in my basement. Nothing too much to worry about, aside from when it grabbed me.
But you have no idea what it's doing. It's literally leeching off your soul when you sleep.
Now for a fun one to end tonight's broadcast.
Be me. Be 10. Jumping on a trampoline with a friend. Decide to see who can jump off the farthest. He jumps first, makes a respectable distance. Watch this shit.jpg. Jump with as much force as my overweight 10-year-old body can produce. Leap further than friend. Land awkwardly on foot. I can't stand on it. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Get driven to the ER. Get x-rays taken. Doctor comes in with a solemn expression. Places x-ray on backlight. Looks at my mother and shakes head. She looks at the x-ray, faints. X-ray shows a skeleton in my foot. Scared shitless ever since. Skeletons are real. I've seen them.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.